What's going on, you guys? It's your boy Patrick, aka Addicted to Combat, back for another week of UFC action. We've got UFC Charlotte up this Saturday, featuring a potential 5-round heavyweight bout between striker Jairzinho Rozenstruik and grappler Jailton Almeida. Very volatile matchup for as long as it lasts. 12 fights in total on this card with a lot of recognizable names and fun matchups. There's only one debuting fighter on this entire card, and there's a couple of transplant fights that should have taken place a few weeks back, and we get them on Saturday. So hit the like, hit the subscribe. Let's break into the predictions, the bets I have so far, and the props I'm targeting. But I'll be back on Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Central Time with a new face on the channel, a new set of eyes to talk gambling and make some money with us. That's Dan Levy from Half the Battle. He'll be joining us on Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Central Time right here, so check back for that. And also on Saturday, this is going to be a daytime card. It's going to be like 10:30 a.m. in the morning where I live, so I'll probably end up doing a live fight companion stream for that. So if you guys are bored, want to drink some mimosas with me, smoke a couple cigars, and watch some degenerate action roll in, fatten up our wallets, we can do that. I'll have some other guys like Johnny K, Cody, maybe Lou Betya on there as well. So whoever shows up, the more the merrier, and I'd love to watch the fights with you guys. So again, hit the like, hit that subscribe button. Let's keep this channel growing, and let's break into the first fight of the night. Kicking off the card at women's bantamweight, we've got a 135-pound scrap between Jessica Rose Clark and Tainara Lisboa. And Lisboa is the only debuting fighter on this card, signed to the UFC about this time last year almost, and we just haven't seen her yet. So making her debut with a 5-2 professional record. This is a very tough test. We'll talk about Jessica Rose Clark first because we've seen her in the UFC 8 times now. She's going 4-4, completely 50-50 at the UFC level. Rose Clark is the Australian, very fun fighter. She's got a kind of a brawling come-forward style. Good Muay Thai weapons in the clinch. She's got good knees, some good dirty boxing, and some strength against the cage to take girls down even. We saw her with Luana Carolina, who's a very slick mover, good kicker. Jessica Rose Clark just took her down and controlled her the majority of 3 rounds. Very smart strategy, but she kind of got too happy with working close range in the clinch, and she got taken down by Stephanie Egger and Julia Stoliarenko in her past 2 fights, which are both round 1 armbar losses. So we're seeing just that Jessica Rose Clark, she can fall victim to better submission grapplers, and she can also fall victim to really elite strikers as well. Girls like Pani Kianzad, who's got a good takedown defense, but she also has just a better movement and a little bit bigger on the feet at distance. So she'll be losing to girls like that, but she's right in the middle of the pack with this 4-4 record. She's got good toughness, like I said, some good come-forward striking, but not the best technique. But she's got a very good pace and cardio as well, so that goes a long way at this level. Tainara Lisboa, we'll see where she falls in between the competition that Rose Clark has been successful and has lost against. She's a Muay Thai fighter, Brazilian, and she had a very high-level championship run in Muay Thai at the international level in 2013 and 14. And before that, you can actually see her, I think, either at 19 or 20 years old, facing Valentina Shevchenko at that point in like 2010. You could see her in South America fighting her. So even though she lost decisively and got bullied, it's cool to see that she's got that background and credentials to have a future UFC champion on her record. And likewise, when she made her debut in mixed martial arts as a pro, she made her debut against Norma Dumont a few years back. So had early striking success with Dumont, who's a current featherweight in the UFC, but Dumont was able to grab her back in round 1 and submit her. So she's got a 5-2 record, 1 decision loss as well. The only fight that she's ever gone to decision, she lost. And I could not find that fight, so I'm not quite sure what happened. If you know in the comments, tell me what happened, if she got out-grappled or if she gassed out. Kind of important here, but she does have a 3-fight winning streak right now. Tainara Lisboa has got, I think, a couple of arm triangles, a couple of grounded-pound stoppages, but they're all against super low-level competition, like, girls that are making their debut against her, girls that are 1-4, so just very poor record. And she's melting through these girls, taking them down, getting right into mount, and testing out her newfound grappling skill set and getting those arm triangles. So just because Rose Clark has some submission losses recently, and you've seen some submission wins from Lisboa, I wouldn't quite connect those two. I think they're completely different arenas, but what's going to happen when Lisboa brings all of that awesome Muay Thai experience, the good knees and the clinch, very devastating elbows and things like that. The knees to the body from Lisboa are nasty, and I think she will be the better striker technically, but with all the MMA experience of Rose Clark, and she does not quit very easily. Lisboa is used to girls folding, kind of in front of her and giving her the stoppage in round 1. What if that doesn't happen for Rose Clark? What if Rose Clark is there in round 2 and round 3? Will the gas tank of Lisboa hold up? Will her durability hold up? These are the questions I have. So where the money line is at now, minus 115 for Rose Clark, minus 105 for Lisboa. I'm going to take Rose Clark to win by decision here. Even the fight goes to decision at minus 190. Maybe the only way I would look to play this, but probably going to be a pass for me. I could definitely see Lisboa being the goods and coming into the UFC and fitting right in against Rose Clark, doing well and beating her. But I got to go with the experience here. I got to go with Rose Clark, who's got the durability and the pace. So Rose Clark by decision is the pick. Next up at welterweight, we've got Gabe Green taking on Bryan Battle. Pretty fun matchup here. I think it's a bit of a short notice for Bryan Battle filling in. He's, I think, on like 5 or 6 weeks notice, so not the shortest in the world for a guy who's 28 years old, stays in good shape. He's making his 3rd walk to the cage as a welterweight for the former Ultimate Fighter winner at middleweight. So Bryan Battle made a splash last August in his welterweight debut. Looked pretty bad on the scales, and then he goes in there and knocks out Takashi Sato with a head kick in less than a minute. I guess he looked just fine. And then he goes in there last time out in November against Renat Fakhretdinov and got out-wrestled from pillar to post. He got cut open by ground and pound on the mat in round 1, knocked down, almost knocked out in round 3. Renat just put a whooping on him. So not a bad price to be paid on Renat. I think he was like a slight favorite at that point when it closed. But Bryan Battle's a busy striker. He's got good cardio, decent durability shown so far. Outside of his last fight, and he's got some sneaky front chokes as well. His submission game is certainly there, as is with Gabe Green. Gabe Green is a very powerful striker, still more of the aggressive come-forward guy, and probably the more dangerous fight ender potentially in this spot. But he also has some solid ability on the ground as well, actually having 6 submissions and 4 knockouts. And the better wrestling of the two here goes to Gabe Green, who's 2-2 in the UFC so far. He had a war with Daniel Rodriguez, a very high-volume war that he lost early on. He had a decision beatdown over Phil Rowe, knocked him down, out-wrestled him in that fight. Round 2 TKO over Johan Lainez after getting dropped early. And now he's losing that decision in his last fight against Ian Garry, who just outstruck him at range. And kind of, Gabe Green just proved how decent of a fighter Ian Garry was. So 30 years old, he should be in his prime here. He's slightly outsized of the measurables, but as far as just like body mass goes, I think he sizes up to Bryan Battle pretty well, and I think he can win this fight, just pressuring forward, landing the bigger strikes. This seems like an easier matchup for Gabe Green than the one he just faced, where he had to chase down Ian Garry, who has such good lateral movement, such good pull counters and speed and accuracy. You're not going to be getting that from Bryan Battle, who's going to be using leg kicks and just busy striking with the hands to try to keep you at bay. I think Gabe Green can close that distance on Battle, land on his chin, maybe hurt him in this spot, and even take the fight to the mat. So I've got a bet on Gabe Green. It dipped down to minus 125. Still around that minus 135 range, and Bryan Battle's around a plus 115 underdog. So I'm on the Gabe Green side, 2 units on him at minus 125. Again, the power, threat, the wrestling, the experience so far in the UFC against pretty high-level competition, and just that forward pressure I think will score better by the minute in the judges' eyes. Up next, we have the people's main event at women's flyweight. We've got Ji Yeon Kim taking on Mandy Bohm, and this is a very startling matchup just due to the odds, because Ji Yeon Kim is a very sizable favorite. I think the money has tightened up a bit, but when I saw it a couple days ago, she was like a minus 275 favorite over Mandy Bohm, who was about a plus 200 underdog. And while the money line tends to lead you in the right direction there, with Ji Yeon Kim being the better technical fighter, she's on a 4-fight losing streak herself, so very hard to believe that she was almost a 3-1 favorite, riding a 4-fight losing streak. Split decision loss to Jocelyn Edwards, decision loss to Priscilla Cachoeira, Molly McCann beat her, and Alexa Grasso beat her as well, all by decision. So Ji Yeon Kim, she's a wushu fighter. She's got that kung fu background, hapkido background, BJJ a little bit as well, but she likes to strike at range, and she's pretty good at it. Nice long punches, closes range well, and she stays very calm in there no matter what happens. Always has that same expression on her face that everything's going to be okay. She can outstrike her way, out of a bad situation, which was what she had to do against Priscilla Cachoeira. That was a decision loss, but there's a world where she won that fight. Priscilla just landed the better strikes and was the one that was pushing forward aggressively. But Ji Yeon Kim outlanded her something wild. I want to say it was like 3-1 or 2-1 on the strikes. We can look at it right now. A couple of fights ago, that was 170 significant strikes for Ji-Yeon Kim against 102 for Priscilla Cachoeira. So, even though she lost technically by the scorecards, in that fight, I saw that Ji-Yeon Kim still has durability. She still has cardio. She still has a lot of heart and grit to keep moving forward and trying to counter-strike out of a bad situation. So that's a lot more than I can say about Mandy Bohm, who she looked okay in the regional scene overseas, and even in Bellator before she came to the UFC, didn't look that great. With a 7-2 record, she's pumping the jab out there, trying to keep the hands low, bait you in for the pull counters. She's just not as fast as she thinks she is, not as powerful either, but she does her best work in the clinch. Not very good at getting the takedowns at this point in the UFC. She is 0-5 in takedowns over her two opponents. Ariane Lipski, she lost to pretty decisively, almost finished in that fight, and she also is coming off of the loss last year to Victoria Leonardo, who out-wrestled her. So I think there is still some more to be seen for Mandy Bohm. I think that if there's anybody she can take down, it is Ji-Yeon Kim, who's got no takedown defense, and pretty much anybody who wants to push the issue on Ji-Yeon Kim will take her down. And the only reason we haven't seen more of that is because Kim has not fought many grapplers. She's fought a lot of people that want to strike with her, win or lose. Ji-Yeon Kim always keeps the fight close. And she's got a 9-win, 6-loss, and 2-draw record, as if to prove my point. And even a couple of those split decision wins in the UFC were just that. They were split. So one judge said that she lost the fight. So this has just got trouble all over it with, even at this point, Ji-Yeon Kim is now, the money line has come down to like -210, -200. So I can imagine people saw that giant plus money number of like +200 or +220 on Mandy Bohm and thought, look, if I just throw a dart on this, I'll certainly be on the value side. And I don't disagree with that. For as horrible as Mandy Bohm is, the money line should be closer to where it's getting to now. But I got to pick Ji-Yeon Kim here. I think she's the much better technical fighter. She's got more of the qualities I named off that you could certainly see if you rewatch that Priscilla Cachoeira fight. But Mandy Bohm is going to be way more hittable. And I could even see Ji-Yeon Kim getting her out of there in the later part of the fight because Bohm's cardio isn't that great either. So that's probably the only way I would play this from a betting perspective, is sprinkling like a round 2, round 3 knockout prop for Ji-Yeon Kim, who I think could get this done in round 3 or by decision. We've got a rebooked lightweight matchup next between Natan Levy and Pete Rodriguez. Supposed to take place a couple weeks back at Yadong Song versus Ricky Simone's fight night, but I think Pete Rodriguez delayed for some reason. Must have been something minor since we're getting it just a couple weeks later. But I did have a bet on Natan Levy parlayed with Caio Barallo that night. That ended up being a successful Barallo moneyline bet. But Natan Levy, I went back to rebook a bet on him as soon as I possibly could, and they reopened the line about the same, right? -265 to -285 for Natan Levy. And I think money is still coming in on Pete Rodriguez on some books. Let me double check what the odds are right now. We're looking at Natan Levy -250 on BetOnline, Pete Rodriguez +211. So yeah, I rebooked this parlay at -285 for Natan Levy with somebody else later on this card. So I guess money is getting better on this one. You can find a better price on the 8-1 Natan Levy, who's 31 years old still. I'm not sure if we broke this fight down last time, but he's a southpaw kickboxer, kind of like a karate-based striking style, bladed stance, very hard to hit, good in-and-out movement for Natan Levy, and he's got a very good submission grappling game with good wrestling too. So he's scored takedowns in every one of his UFC fights so far, and he's only lost his first fight to Rafa Garcia, who was a better wrestler than him, right? Could take the fight to the mat and strike him up. So back-to-back decision wins over Genaro Valdez and Mike Breeden. And he even dropped Genaro Valdez with, I think, like hook kicks or something like that. So he's got a very crafty kickboxing style. And Pete Rodriguez is somebody who wants to get up close and work the close-range traditional boxing. He's 26 years old, and we know that Pete Rodriguez is 1-1 in the UFC. He's somewhere between getting knocked out by Jack Della Maddalena on short notice and beating Mike Jackson, who's not really a real professional fighter, but he treated him as such and knocked him out viciously. So Pete's got a 5-1 record. You can only assume he's getting better at 26, but I just really think that he's kind of a one-dimensional fighter here. He's got that first-round knockout or bust quality to him, right? And even that I might hedge out, right? I've got a bet for a couple of units on Natan Levy and somebody we'll talk about later on the card. But Pete Rodriguez, by round 1 knockout, has win condition, in my opinion, that's plus 850. So consider that if you're looking to hedge out or make sure your investment on Natan Levy is safe if you're with me on that side. And again, both guys are going to size up pretty well. Pete Rodriguez, a pretty muscular guy, but I got no idea what his cardio is going to look like outside of round one. I don't know if his finishing ability falls off after round one. He's just never shown an ability to win a fight past that. So Natan Levy, who's got 3 submissions, a very good minute winning ability with 5-1 indecision results, and UFC experience. So, yeah, give me the more dynamic striker here. I think he keeps Rodriguez at bay and probably finishes him inside the distance. But like I said, got that money line. I paid minus 285 on his money line. It's now come down to minus, what did I say it was? Minus 251. I'm looking right now on BetOnline. So, not a bad price in my opinion. I think you could even play that, straight up on the money line. Okay, and conveniently up next is the second half of the parlay I just mentioned. Paired with Natan Levy, I've got in this fight between Carlos Ulberg and Ihor Poteiria at 205 pounds. I'm pairing Natan Levy with Carlos Ulberg here, betting-wise. I like Ulberg's striking weapons, his technique, his skill level has been a lot higher so far in the UFC. He's got all the measurables as well, 6'4" with a long reach, 32 years old, and he trains alongside our current middleweight champion at City Kickboxing. And just like Adesanya, Carlos Ulberg started his career as a professional kickboxer and did pretty well. He's got knockout power, he's athletic, he can strike out of both stances, and he's 7-1 in his pro MMA record so far, currently riding a 3-fight winning streak in the UFC. He lost against Kennedy and Nzechukwu in early 2021, almost got Nzechukwu out of there in round 1, just laid every strike possible on him, and then tired out, and Kennedy came back and won in round 2. And it was shocking at the time. Now we know that's how Kennedy fights, and that's not a bad loss in hindsight. But Ulberg came back last year against Fabio Cherant by decision, and then more impressively dropped Stamann with a jab in round 1, knocked him out. And then against Nikolai Negumereanu last November, he knocked him out very quickly as well. So that's an opponent that these two men both share. Ihor Poteiria is a Ukrainian striker, combat sambo background, I think a karate background as well. Just a wild striker and a pretty potent finisher with 8 knockouts and 7 subs among his wins so far. A big guy for the weight class at 6'3", only 26 years old, but he has that young man cockiness. I think he thinks his technique is better than it really is. And he's going to either land, viciously like he did on the Contender Series to win the contract, or he's going to miss wildly and gas himself out like he did against Negumereanu in his debut last summer. And then he got knocked out in round 2. So this guy does not have very good cardio. He throws 100% into all of his strikes with no pacing. I don't think his combat sambo, or his submission game for that matter is very high level. In fact, his professional record is super padded. When you watch those fights, they're not the greatest level of competition. He just melts through these guys. But he came back and actually got a win in the UFC in January by defeating, and I bet on him as a minus 190 favorite to defeat Shogun Rua, who was just a walking corpse of himself in front of his home Brazilian crowd. So you knew that was going to be Shogun's retirement fight. He should have retired 10 years ago, but Ihor was able to knock him out by just bopping him over the temple and some follow-up ground and pound strikes. So a pretty easy day in the office for Poteiria, but back to reality against a super skilled prime striker in Ulberg, who I think knocks him out within 1 round. But I think the under 1.5 here is live. I think Ulberg is very good when somebody's chasing him. He's a great counter striker, just like Adesanya is. So, man, like I said, he dropped Stamann with a jab. He dropped Nikolai Negumereanu with some short counter hook as well. Oh, it was that nice jab, and then on the same left hand, he hit a nice short left hook. It was the combination that dropped Nikolai, who's been pretty durable. So give me Carlos Ulberg very confidently. I like the knockout prop as well, but the under I think would be just the same. I think it's maybe minus 115 or so for the under 1.5. Let me double check what that would be. We're looking at Ulberg, Poteiria, under 1.5, minus 140. I think that's live in this spot, because if Poteiria wins, it's going to be early before he gasses out, and if Ulberg wins, which is more than likely, I think he does it very quickly. So give me Carlos Ulberg, round 1 knockout. We've got a very fun matchup at bantamweight up next between Cody Stamann and Douglas Silva de Andrade. You've got the 33-year-old wrestle boxer, former D2 collegiate wrestler Cody Stamann as the minus 155 favorite here. Douglas Silva de Andrade, the Brazilian finisher, knockout artist, he is the plus 135 underdog. And going into this fight, I thought I had a clear view on who I thought was going to win and who I thought I was going to bet on, but it kind of changed as I went through their records. Now, 21-5 and 1 draw for Cody Stamann, and you've got 28 wins and 5 losses for Douglas Silva de Andrade. They both have stellar records and have done pretty well for themselves in the UFC, facing great competition competitively. Like I said, a wrestling game plan from Cody Stamann, but he does have power in his hands up close. He's on a 2-fight winning streak, beating Luan Lacerda, a debuting grappler, in January by decision, and before that, Eddie Wineland, he knocked out in round 1 last year. Before that, Cody Stamann was on a 3-fight losing streak to Said Nurmagomedov by submission, Merab by decision, and Jimmy Rivera by decision, which, not bad names. Even the Jimmy Rivera one, you might kind of look at a certain way, but you got to remember that Cody Stamann needs to get the fight to the mat to have success in his fights. And Jimmy Rivera's whole shtick was that he had pretty good striking and amazing takedown defense. I think Cody Stamann was only one of the few people to ever take him down. So he did okay against Merab as well. Merab out-hustled him and beat him, but, there was a couple of reversals for Cody Stamann in that spot. But again, when fights are forced to stay standing for Cody Stamann, he does not do very well historically. And as if to make my point, his last fight was, I think, a short notice bout for Luan Lacerda, a grappler from Brazil making his debut, and Cody Stamann was about a minus 500 favorite to beat him. Cody Stamann could not go to the mat with him. That wouldn't have been smart because of the grappling capability of Lacerda. So Stamann stayed in the pocket and banged with him, and Luan Lacerda, the grappler, made it close. He even gave up round 3 to Luan Lacerda, and many people thought he lost the entire fight in general. So, not a good look. And there's been a lot of examples. Like I said, Jimmy Rivera was able to outbox him even at that point in his career just because of the good takedown defense. Stamann couldn't get the fight to the mat. Yeah, similar with Merab Dvalishvili, right? Once the wrestling is, you've got that edged out against you, he didn't have the ability to stand and bang, put up good striking output or anything like that. So, yeah, there's something to be said about the durability of Stamann, though, that goes in his favor in this matchup. He's never been knocked out. Douglas Silva de Andrade, 20 knockouts out of his 28 wins. That's really what this guy is good at, is stunning his opponents and then having his way with them on the mat even. He's got good grappling. So hard leg kicks, works the body well, very good boxing combinations. And in the pocket, I think he's going to be the much cleaner, faster striker here. Douglas Silva de Andrade is 37 years old, and that's really the only thing I have going against him in this matchup. I think he's got better cardio. I think he's got better resolve to build into a fight. And I think he's going to be able to keep this fight on the feet. He's got a 77% takedown defense. He just faced Sergey Morozov last year, who's a grappler, and he was able to outpace him and actually submit him in round 2. So, yeah, I'm liking the plus money side of Douglas. The only thing stopping me from loading up more here is the fact that Douglas is 37, almost 38. But all things considered, I just think the style works for Douglas, and it's totally opposite when I went into the fight and the tape here. I thought I would pick Cody Stamann. I thought I'd pick him and actually put a bet down on him, but give me the underdog. 1.5 units at plus 135 on Douglas Silva de Andrade. I think he wins a decision here. I do also like the fight goes the decision around like minus 190. Not a bad bet there either. Both guys are notoriously durable. So, again, give me the underdog in Douglas Silva de Andrade. He might be old, but the guy is still in amazing shape. Up next at heavyweight, another rescheduled matchup from about a month ago at this point. This is Chase Sherman versus Carl Williams. The original matchup a month ago was supposed to be Chase Sherman against Chris Barnett. An amazing matchup that everybody would have loved to see, but Barnett pulls out for injury, I think. Carl Williams comes in on short notice, having just fought Lucas Brzeski at that point. And he was a massive favorite, like a minus 500 favorite to beat Chase Sherman, probably due to the grappling credentials. So Carl Williams was ready to fight. Chase Sherman then pulls out, and now we have this rebooked matchup. So the money line, I think, is still right around the same, maybe a little bit better for Carl Williams. Okay, it settled around minus 400 at this point for Williams. Chase Sherman could be head around plus 310. And I more or less agree with that. It's hard to have that big of a disparity in money line at heavyweight just because the puncher's chance is so real and so often, but Williams is a pretty technical striker at 33 years old. He came in on the Contender Series, out-wrestled Jimmy Lawson, who was a giant heavyweight D1 Penn State wrestler, but he gassed out and didn't have that MMA quality about him, so Williams out-wrestled him, got the contract, beat Lucas Brzeski, who was a big Dana White Contender Series star as well. And he was able to take down Brzeski 8 times in their matchup. And the only gripe that I can have about Carl Williams is, as a former 205er, his stopping power, his finishing ability at heavyweight has just not been there, right? He's got only 3 knockouts in his career out of 8 wins. He's got 5-0 in decision record, though. So there is a double-edged sword to this at heavyweight. Like, he might be a little bit faster being the lighter man. He might have a little bit more cardio to last, which a lot of these guys don't have. So, you know, you can kind of square that with the fact that he's not finishing these fights, but it does leave his chin exposed for too long in a heavyweight fight. Like Chase Sherman, say what you want, the guy's got power in his hands, mostly early, but we did see against Jared Vandera last year that Chase Sherman could finish him in round 3 if need be. That power does translate. But every time that Chase Sherman loses a fight, it's because he's getting taken down. Any fight that he manages to win, he's able to stay on his feet and get the knockout early. So Chase Sherman, 2-5 in his last 7 UFC fights. Last weighing in around 256 and losing a decision to Waldo Cortez Acosta, who just boxed him up and outpointed him. Something wild in that fight, right? He tripled him up on strikes over 3 rounds, and that was just in November. So I got to go with Carl Williams, who trains down there at ATT Lima. His striking at times does not look that bad. It looks kind of technical for a heavyweight, and he's again, 8 out of 13 takedowns on Lucas Brzeski, scoring 10 minutes of control time, even knocking him down in the second part of that fight. So Carl Williams is the pick. While I think the money line is still wide, I did parlay him up with somebody else on this card I'll mention later. We've got a welterweight legends matchup next between Matt Brown and Court McGee. Brown is 42 years old, McGee is 38 years old, and both of these guys have come through, I think, those earlier seasons of The Ultimate Fighter, back when I used to watch this show, which was a long time ago. Matt Brown at 42, you've got to imagine that a lot of these things that he's known for kind of relying on in the fight, and we've seen it, his cardio, his durability, things that used to get him through to victory are now kind of failing him and being a detriment. But he still has that power. He's got the power to change the tides of a fight. Brian Barberena, who narrowly beat him by split decision last time out, he felt that power, and you could see Brian Barberena back off at certain times. Definitely, you know, gained respect for the power coming back his way, especially up close in the dirty boxing. Matt Brown can close the distance with 1-1-2s and then cage fight, but that's also where Court McGee likes to fight as well. He likes to kind of have very basic striking weapons, leg kicks, jabs his way into range, gets a big overhand or a big hook, and once that lands on you, Court McGee's going to shoot for the takedown and usually get the takedown. So these days he relies on that heavy smothering top pressure. He's taken out young guys like Ramiz Brahimaj, older guys like Claudio da Silva, and able to grind them out to a decision victory. Last time we saw Court McGee, though, he got sparked in like 94 seconds of round 1 by Jeremiah Wells, who became the second person to knock out Court McGee and the first to do so in like 10 or 11 fights. So is that a sign that the durability of Court McGee is failing? I don't think so. You know, I think Jeremiah Wells just hits very hard, and that's going to happen to most people. But, you know, there is something to be said about either of these guys could, you know, you could see their chin just totally go away from them at this point. So the problem here is that Matt Brown is such a good moment winner, such a good finisher. 15 knockouts, 6 submissions out of his 23 wins. So almost every time he wins a fight, it's by finish. And Court McGee is still very durable, and it's going to dictate where this fight plays out. And most likely it plays out on the mat. So if Matt Brown's going to get worn out from the cage wrestling of Court McGee, he's not going to have that power in rounds 2 and rounds 3. I see his winning ability very limited here. So give me Court McGee to have a smothering wrestling clinic once again over 3 rounds. Stay safe early in this fight where Matt Brown is the most dangerous. Tire him out and win minutes as this fight goes on. The problem with this is that Court McGee's a minus 230 favorite, which just seems wrong to bet that much chalk on him against Matt Brown. Like, I feel like there's inherently some value even at 42 in the Matt Brown plus 195 side, but I don't want to play either side here. I do like the fight goes to decision the most at minus 150, the over at minus 175, the over 2.5. You got to imagine just because 9 out of 10 of the last fights for Court McGee have seen the scorecards. You could even play Court McGee by decision just to chop down that number, but then we're getting into the, like, you know, you gotta hope that a Matt Brown at 42 can survive until the final bell for that decision prop to cash on McGee. This just seems like something I don't want much to do with from any perspective at all. So maybe the overs would be the way to go. You're not paying that much chalk for it. But either way, give me Court McGee to win by decision. Another welterweight bout up next with Tim Means and Alex Morono. And there's going to be a lot of similarities in this matchup from the last one, mostly on the Tim Means side, because he's 39 years old, very long in the tooth with a 32 win, 14 loss, 1 draw, 1 no contest record. He's been in the league for a while, and he's been fighting as a professional for a long, long time. And he's one of these guys kind of like Matt Brown, where he's got a gritty toughness to him that's gotten him by successfully. He's relied on his durability, his forward pressure, and pace, but that durability is certainly leaving him at this point in his career. He's been knocked down many times recently, and although only officially knocked out, I think one or two times. I think one time was a doctor stoppage, and one was to Nico Price in the UFC. Even though that's true, he's been knocked down quite a bit. Kevin Holland club and subbed him last year as well. So as a guy that's hard to time, as a guy that likes to do a lot of dirty boxing in the clinch, use those weapons to bully you there, he's still 6'2" with a long reach, and he's a very awkward southpaw fighter in general. But that durability is failing him. I think Alex Morono is going to be the much cleaner striker. Still light on his feet at 32 years old. Morono's always going to be overlooked and underappreciated because of the way he looks. He's just a soft guy, just like no muscle definition on him, white as the driven snow. But, the guy is a serious threat, man. He's got nasty boxing. He's got good in and out movement, good lateral movement. And if this ever makes it to the mat, he's got a very legitimate BJJ. Just like Tim Means has very good front chokes, but you don't see it that often. Morono has very good BJJ that you don't see often either. And he does have equally the same amount of knockouts as he does submissions. But Morono mostly going to decision, mostly outpointing people, and just doing the better work in at least 2 of 3 rounds. Kind of like he did against Matt Semmelsberger, avoided the big power and managed to just do the better work. In his last fight, Morono was called in December on like 4 days notice against Ponzinibbio on a pay-per-view card. Comes in there and beats Santiago Ponzinibbio, knocks him down in round 1, wins round 2, and then ends up falling short at the buzzer in round 3 and getting knocked out. So very good showing from Morono. Like I said, he's just always underrated. But in this fight, they actually are giving him some credit on the betting market because he is a minus 220 to 230 favorite over Tim Means. The cat's out of the bag. Morono's going to have the better striking output, the better movement, the better durability. He's a lot younger. So there's a lot of things going there. I wouldn't even be surprised if Morono treats this fight like he did Donald Cerrone about a year and a half ago and went in there and got himself like a round 1 knockout. Tim Means has been dropped quite a bit, even in his last fight against Max Griffin in October. That Griffin's not a big finisher by any means. He knocked him down, almost finished Tim Means in round 1. And how that fight went to a split decision, I'm not sure who scored it for Tim Means, but they must have been his number 1 fan because that should have been a clear 3-round to 0 win for Max Griffin. But either way, Tim Means coming off of back-to-back losses, Morono coming off of a loss. I'm probably going to put the money line bet down on Morono I'm seeing minus 223 on BetOnline. I'll probably put a couple of units on him. I don't see really how he loses this fight. He's too slick to get held in the cage and going to be just the younger, fresher man here. So give me Morono to win a clear-cut decision, but I would not be surprised if he finishes this by knockout. Another welterweight bout up next between Daniel Rodriguez and Ian Garry. This is going to be a very fun matchup and a very highly contested one amongst the MMA community because everybody's looking at their chance to fade the undefeated Irishman Ian Garry. 11-0, 6 knockouts, 1 submission, and a 4-0 decision record. He is now 4-0 in the UFC with 2 decisions and 2 knockouts, coming off of that round 3 knockout win over Song Kenan. And he's an elite striker with great timing, a lot of different kickboxing weapons, fast, accurate, and he's got a judo background to complement all of that as well. 25 years old, he can only be improving in all areas. Daniel Rodriguez, 11 years older at 36 years old. I think comparable reach, maybe a little bit less reach for D-Rod, but he's 6 foot tall, so not a small welterweight himself. And he's coming off of his first loss that happened inside the distance. The first time he's been finished was at the hands of Neil Magny by a round 3 Darce choke last November, which was a little bit ironic because D-Rod is a very accomplished BJJ practitioner. He's got competent submissions, 4 subs on his record, but in the UFC, he's been mostly known for his striking weapons. Very good traditional boxing up close, good combinations and counters, and an aggressive forward pressure style. So I think Ian Garry is used to this kind of game plan, right? Like he dealt with this on a smaller scale against Gabe Green, who we talked about earlier, and that was last year. Gabe Green was the shorter, stockier man, probably the better finisher, trying to get in the face of Ian Garry, trap him on the cage, and engage in like a close-range brawl. I think that's what Daniel Rodriguez is going to want to do in this fight as well. And Ian Garry has been criticized in the past for not having. He just hadn't. He didn't have the best head movement. Didn't have the best. He would draw back in a straight line, some tall man defense, try to evade off the cage and get clipped. We saw that early on against guys like Darian Weeks or Jordan Williams. But it looked a lot better against Song Kanan, honestly. He did get dropped. He got folded in round one, recovered incredibly well, and then came back and went back to work and got the round 3 finish over Song Kanan. But Ian Garry, I saw a lot of spots in that fight where he was being evasive, keeping a hand up a little bit more than he used to, and his movement just looked a lot more defensively sound. So I'm seeing improvements, as you should, from a 25-year-old in Ian Garry. I went into this, especially where the money line is at, trying to fade Ian Garry and put a bet on Daniel Rodriguez. And where it's at now, plus 230 to plus 260 on D-Rod, I think there is some value on him in this fight. But, man, after that last fight with Neil Magny, like, I know Magny is good. I know D-Rod has the better experience, but Ian Garry, one thing about him is he has a high striking output. He can stay on the bike the whole time, backpedaling, side to side, evading, counter-striking, pull counters, landing on you, clinching with you. He doesn't really get that tired. Whereas Daniel Rodriguez, the only reason he got Darce choked in round 3 against Magny is because he gassed out. There was a lot going on. Striking at distance. One guy was pursuing the other. There was some cage wrestling, some takedown defense. I get it. It was a grueling pace, but man, you can't get yourself tired against Ian Garry and start chasing him and not cutting off the cage well. I think he's going to piece Daniel Rodriguez up, who we talk about Garry not being that defensively sound. I saw D-Rod getting lit up pretty badly too, not only in his fight against Neil Magny, but against Li Jingliang as well. That was a low output affair. Neither man really gained too much of an edge to call that fight a robbery. I like what I'm seeing from Ian Garry. I think he's making improvements. I think he's going to be far faster, more accurate, the longer striker here. So I'm going to pick Ian Garry to win by decision in this one. I don't think he finishes D-Rod, who's never been knocked out, but I think D-Rod is very finish dependent in this match. I don't see him taking the fight to the mat. I think he's going to chase Ian Garry and just try to cut off the cage and land a big bomb on him, which he could certainly do and put out the lights of Garry, but I'm looking at experience, pure BJJ and power for D-Rod. I'm looking at youth, measurable, speed, output, cardio, all going in the favor of Garry. So the money line is a bit wide, right? I'm not going to pay, what are we looking at, minus 310 at this point, minus 275 at best on Ian Garry. Absolutely not. Him to win by decision is plus 130. That could be a look. This one I liked. Even Daniel Rodriguez, inside the distance, scorecards, no action, is plus 180. I might actually put like a unit on that, because if Rodriguez wins, in my opinion, I think he does it by inside the distance stoppage, knockout, but I don't see him getting finished himself. So if this goes to the scorecards, he loses, we get our cash back there. If he wins by knockout, we get to, share in some of the communal glee of fading Ian Garry in his first loss. But give me Ian Garry. My prediction is he wins this by decision pretty easily. Light heavyweight bout up next between Anthony Smith and Johnny Walker. This should be a very fun co-main event for the fight card, because both guys rarely see the scorecards. They're very kill or be killed for both of them, which is a little bit odd to think about, because Johnny Walker, clearly has that appearance, spinning attacks, striking out of both stances with his hands low, flying knees, spinning back fists, anything to get the job done. He certainly is reckless and has paid for it with his consciousness. But Anthony Smith, a much more refined kickboxer, kind of more measured approach, a more cerebral fighter, and good jiu-jitsu on the ground. Just not the wrestling to take it there. But yeah, he's pretty kill or be killed as well. Out of his 36 wins, only 34 of those were by finish. So only winning by decision twice. He rarely sees the scorecards either. So Smith has also been knocked out 10 times and submitted 4 times across his career, which does span across Bellator, Strikeforce, CFFC, the middleweight division mostly. But, he's becoming a little bit more inactive. We haven't seen him in a while, and it's been since last July when he broke his ankle fighting Magomed Ankalaev and then got ground and pounded in round 2 for it. So it's been a while. Before that, I think we last saw him club and sub Ryan Spann in round 1. So he's got a lot of quick finishes as well, for and against. I could see this going under 1.5 for sure. I could see this not seeing past 5 minutes for sure. And I got to favor Johnny Walker in this spot. He's going to be the bigger man that's going to take more risks, and he looks more aggressive these days. You know, he's coming off of that round 1 knockout over Paul Craig, who was a grappler, grabbed Johnny Walker's leg, and on one leg, Johnny Walker hopped towards the cage, punching him and hammer fisting him with his free arm, and knocked out Paul Craig in a couple of minutes. So those kinds of knockouts are just so creative and, you know, unplanned. I just think he's got a big edge over a lot of guys because he's willing to take those risks, and he's powerful with those giant limbs. So, you know, we saw him just before that Paul Craig fight actually get a submission win over Ian Kuntalaba in round 1 as well. So Johnny Walker was he was a bigger favorite here. I know Anthony Smith before the weekend was like a plus 155 underdog, which, hey, if you would have hammered that, that's not bad value there, since Johnny Walker by nature is like 50-50. But where it stands now, Anthony Smith is the slight favorite at minus 115. Walker, the slight underdog, at minus 105. The under 1.5 in this fight, let's take a look at it. It's minus 140. I like the under 1.5. I like the fight ends in round 1. And I'm going to try to craft some sort of prop or maybe even same game parlay when that comes out later, where it's Johnny Walker to win in round, you know, within 1 or 2 rounds or within, 6 minutes. I don't think it's going to take much more than round 1, because if you look at Johnny Walker's record, 16 knockouts out of his 20 wins, 14 of those knockouts are in round 1. And just if you want to look specifically at the UFC, he's 6-4 in the UFC. 8 of those 10 fights ended in round 1. So the win or lose, this normally doesn't see a second round. Both of these guys are going to be feinting and faking, and eventually I think they're going to just... It'll be Johnny Walker that'll open up and either make a fatal flaw and lose, or he'll land the knockout shot on Anthony Smith. So I think Johnny Walker's been more focused and more active. I think I'll take him to get his hand raised by round 1 knockout. Okay, we made it all the way to the main event of the fight card. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, and let's break into this match. At heavyweight, scheduled for 5 rounds if we need them, between Jairzinho Rozenstruik and Jailton Almeida. Rozenstruik being, of course, the striker in this matchup, Almeida the grappler. From Suriname, Rozenstruik was a professional kickboxer of, I think, like 80 or 90 professional bouts. And he also has a mixed martial arts record that's largely knockout dependent, right? 13 wins, 12 of them are by knockout. And in the UFC, he's probably got the most power out of anybody on the roster now that Francis Ngannou is gone, because Rozenstruik he's touching people with jabs and they're going down. Like Alan Crowder, one of the first guys, dropped him with a jab. Alistair Overeem, even in round 5, that was set up by a jab. Short left hooks on guys like Sakai and Arlovsky, knocked them out. Once again, the jab returns against Chris Daukaus in his last performance, a sub 1 minute knockout that was started with the jab and ended with a step in jab that knocked him out cold. So, this guy's got scary power, and he kind of plods forward. He could be very low output, as you would expect a powerful heavyweight to be. But sometimes it just never, that savage nature never turns on, that aggressiveness never turns on for Rozenstruik until somebody brings it out of him. Like, they can dance around him like Cyril Gane, kick his legs, kick his body. He won't really do much. But as soon as you land on his chin and you're within reach, he'll swarm on you like you just kicked a beehive or something. So Rozenstruik is a very scary man, and he will slowly plod and put you to sleep with that lumbering movement until you realize you've been trapped against the cage and you're within range for his combination. So durability is good. I've seen him take some massive shots before, but his takedown defense is not good, and his anti-grappling get-up game, all very, very much like you would expect from a kickboxer. It's just non-existent. So guys like Overeem in the past have been able to just simply body lock him and trip him to the mat, and he looked pathetic trying to get up. Curtis Blades is a good wrestler, but was able to ground him and win the fight that way. Even in Rozenstruik's debut, you go back to Junior Albini, probably took down Rozenstruik the way that Almeida will plan to do it, which is getting him against the cage and shooting the double leg, just ripping his legs from underneath him on the cage. So those are the few people that took him down. I'm looking at the stats now. It's saying Cyril Gane did twice, but I think that's more of just like Cyril Gane in the clinch, buckling his knees, and they counted that as a takedown. But regardless, 35 years old for Rozenstruik, going to be the shorter man, less reach. but he's going to outweigh Almeida by about 30 pounds, so that's all things to consider. You'd want to see like Rozenstruik get ready within the first minute to land a big counter for the takedown. He knows it's coming, right? A big uppercut, one of the jumping knees that he's known to do, something like that would counter the takedown. That it's inevitable because Jailton Almeida does a couple of things in his fights. He does a snap front kick to the body, and then he just dives for a double leg takedown, slams his opponent against the cage, and then pulls the double leg takedown, rips him to the mat. That's what he's done every time since the Contender Series. And I actually looked at the time to see, because it feels like it's happening faster and faster. Against Nasruddinov, Jailton Almeida took 1 minute and 40 to land that first takedown. Against Danilo Marquez in his UFC debut, it took him 25 seconds. Against Parker Porter, it took him 22 seconds. Against Anton Turkley, 15 seconds to land that first takedown. And most recently against Shamil Abdurakhimov, it took just 12 seconds for Jailton to land the first takedown. So he's getting faster. Is he going to break the 12-second record now too? I mean, it's just getting wild how fast this guy will just sprint for the takedown and land it on these guys that are much bigger than him. So a former 205er in Jailton Almeida, just a relentless athletic freak of an athlete at the grappling. He does the grappling and submission tournaments as well, but he's got an 18-2 record in MMA, 7 knockouts, 11 subs. So all 18 wins are by finish, and 17 of those 18 wins, Jailton Almeida has finished in under 1.5 rounds. So his last fight was his only one that went over that. Against Shamil, it took him until late round 2 to get the ground and pound and then into a rear naked choke stoppage, which is ultimately what he does. He gets his opponent to the mat. He slowly gets into a dominant position, pounds their face in until they turn and give up their neck, and then he chokes him out. So it's just a pattern of success that I don't see stopping in this fight, especially since Rozenstruik is such a defensive liability when it comes to the takedown defense. He finds himself a minus 475 to minus 600 favorite, does Jailton Almeida, about plus 375 or so for Rozenstruik. And either guy should win this inside the distance and should do it very early, right? I don't see this really going past the 1.5 round mark. I laid out all of the stats as to why Almeida should get this done historically the way he always does. And Rozenstruik, his power does translate late. We saw it against Overeem. He was able to get that knockout late in the fight at the last 10 seconds of a 25-minute match. But Almeida, I think, wouldn't even last that long. If he tires himself out worse than he did in his last fight against Shamil, then I think Rozenstruik is going to find his mark on the feet pretty quickly. But I think Almeida is just going to be able to soften this guy up, make him desperate to stand, and then just grab his neck. So give me Almeida by round 1 submission. I don't hate that, but all the props are just completely... There's no value on the inside the distance props for Almeida, so... I did parlay his money line at minus 475, which I saw today with Carl Williams, and I want to add maybe some sort of a same game parlay, takedowns, significant strikes for Almeida, and then within a round or something like that. And if you could same game parlay that later in the week on DraftKings to try to get even money or close to it for Almeida, that would be the key. But I think inside the distance for Almeida is minus 300 or more. So not much you can do with that. The under 1.5 is minus 200. That's also ridiculous, but probably hits. So give me Jailton Almeida by round 1 submission. Okay, there you have it, you guys. All the fights broken down for UFC Charlotte. Rozenstruik versus Almeida. Can't wait to see how that one shakes out. It's been very exciting to see the destruction of the heavyweight division at the hands of Jailton Almeida. We'll see if Biggie Boy can stop that or not. But hit the like, hit the subscribe. Let's keep the channel growing. And make sure you check back here on Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Central Time. I'll be having Dan from Half the Battle, and we'll be talking props and just further predictions and ways to make money on this card. So I'll talk to you guys then. Cheers.